So welcome to this week's edition of Tree Lady Talks. I am delighted to be with Jaroslav Kolarik from the Czech Republic.
Hello, it's a real pleasure to be with you. My name is Jaroslav, as you said. I'm CEO of a company called Safe Trees, which delivers the consultancy services in arboriculture. And at the same moment, I'm a member of Arboricultural Academy, which is NGO in Czech Republic. And we try to propose the big variety of educational services, certifications, and support work, let's say, for arborists, like publications, standards, etc. As the Arboriculture Academy, we are part of European Arboriculture Council. We are one of the certification centers there. And recently we are part of several international projects, which most probably we'll speak about later.
Absolutely. So your academy, is it for anybody in Europe or anybody around the world? Tell us more about the type of courses that you run.
First of all, there is a language barrier, of course. We speak Czech, even you hear it in my English, definitely. And we created Arboriculture Academy for the purpose to, let's say, support Czech and Slovak people with all the know-how which we got around the globe, really. So the first intention is to really be Czech-based and to work for Czech arborists. On the other hand, at certain moment we learned that we have something to offer, at least for other European countries. And that was the main impulse when we started to search around for possibilities to, let's say, get financial supports by EU for creating, project for within, mostly under the wings of EAC, to, let's say, offer our know-how to other countries.
That's really interesting. And the European Arboricultural Council, how many countries belong to that? Is it all European countries, or do they have to actively join?
I would say vast majority, and even more, because at this moment the European Arboricultural Council has 30 members, whereas if I remember well, 24 European countries are members. But just for the translations of European standards at this moment, we have in translating parties in Turkey, in Israel. So not only countries from EU are members of EAC.
Oh, so it's good to know there's such a wide reach of countries part of the European Arboricultural Council. Tell us a bit about the role of that council and the benefits it provides to its members.
EAC was created to, let's say, increase the level of arboriculture in Europe, and the first products were certifications programs, a European Tree Worker and European Tree Technician. This is maybe the most spread arboricultural qualification now throughout the EU, and serves as a tool for people who want to work elsewhere, work in other countries. But for many countries, this is the only certification program which is available. So even in Czech Republic, when we started to, let's say, build the arboricultural industry, the ETW was the first, let's say, kind of certification we had. And this is very important, because if tenders start to be built in arboriculture and let's say bigger financial amounts are invested into the tree care, it's very necessary to have this possibility to choose companies or individuals who are qualified for that kind of work, because you know very well that in tree care this is quite an issue. So EAC is, let's say, the organization which connects and supports certified arborists throughout the EU.
It's so important, isn't it? Because in the absence of regulation, to say that somebody who's working in trees or working with trees in whatever way, we need something to give clients and members of the public confidence in our level of ability and our knowledge. And I mean, if you're going to practice as a doctor, it's well recognised, the path that you would go on. But with arborists, it's not so clear and certainly not widely understood. So I think it's a really good thing. I mean, I wonder if you have any sense of the sort of proportion of those working in trees, sort of are practicing arborists, will have some level of certification within EU? I know it's a really hard question to ask. I'm not sure I could answer that in the UK.
In EU, definitely not. But in Czech Republic, we've got, let's say, one informal webpage where arborists just, offer their services. It's called CzechTrees.com. And there we have something 1,500 registered companies, which maybe is something more than half of companies which are in the Czech Republic. So the number is 2,000 plus minus. And certified arborists, we've got at this moment slightly above 600. So that's the proportion of, let's say, companies on the market versus companies or individuals who decided to get the certification.
That's actually really good. And so let's talk about those standards for a moment. Let's talk about the tree work standard. What do people who are certified have to go through to achieve that certification?
Mhm. There are at this moment 4 or 5 even levels of arboricultural certification. We run, as I told you before, we are part of EAC and run this international certification, which is divided into 2 levels. The first level is European Tree Worker, which is tree climber, climbing arborist, practical arborist, and the other is European Tree Technician, which I would describe as an owner of arboricultural companies. So someone who is responsible for arborists, provides them with tasks they need to do on trees, delivers calculations for tree work, etc. At this moment in development are another 2 levels of arboricultural qualification, and that's European Tree Assessor, which is for consultants, and European Tree Manager, which is more for, let's say, the deputy of the investor, of the tree owner. So at this moment, we've got either running or in development 4 arboricultural or levels of arboriculture qualification.
That's excellent. And what is the understanding of the importance of these certification levels with the general public and the clients? Are people beginning to realise there's something they can give them some quality assurance?
That's continual fight, I would say.
Yeah, same in the UK.
In Czech Republic, the arboriculture really started in 1990, plus minus, after the so-called Velvet Revolution, after we changed the regime. And so you can see that the history of arboriculture in our part of Europe is pretty short. And I must tell you that the development was really rapid. And after something like 15 years, we were already pretty recognized thanks to lots of work with public, lots of publications, lots of activities arborists provided. Quite an important part was, let's say, I would say a kind of show where we do every year the climbing competitions, which is pretty interesting for public. And but on the other hand, if we speak about with tree owners, if we speak about municipalities or even private owners, the level of information is still pretty low because we are such a small industry, in fact. So if someone really needs tree work on tree or work with trees, he quite often goes for foresters or people or gardeners or people who have some connection with arboriculture, obviously, but they're not professionals with non-fruit, non-forest trees. And sometimes the approach is completely different. I would stress the work with old trees, which is really something which arborists are the experts in. And even within EAC, I forgot to mention one very important activity, and that's certification veteran tree specialist,
Yes.
which runs only last, I think, 6 years.
Yes.
And this is really a jewel in between the arboricultural qualifications, because this is work with trees which are completely irreplaceable.
Absolutely.
And the biggest value, not only from the tree, let's say, perspective, but from the perspective of the full ecosystem connected with those trees.
And our link to our historic past and our sense of place, and they are a scarce resource. So this is a really great qualification, and I understand it's oversubscribed for people on a waiting list to do it, and I haven't done it myself yet, but I will do at some point, because it's the gold standard. And I think it's established itself quite quickly amongst our international community as being the go-to qualification for that, so that it's really heartening and good news.
We really hope so, because there is, at this moment, it's quite a lack of certification centers, because if I'm not mistaken, there are only 5 countries at this moment who can offer the VetCert certification in their language, really. We are now in communication with our colleagues in Ireland, in Croatia, in Germany, really, because, you know, Germany being a really big country with a really huge number of arborists, at this moment there is no certification center for a German-speaking arborist for VetCert. So it's still in development, and it's really lots of work to be done yet.
Yes, and the other thing I think is really good of any tree organisation is a sense of fellowship, the sense of belonging to something, because many of us work on our own or in very small teams, and we can sometimes feel like we're a lone voice for trees in our working life. And I think there's something to be said for just getting together and having a chat and making new connections and sharing ideas. Tell us
Definitely.
about the opportunities that the European Arboricultural Council provides for that.
Definitely. This is exactly what Arboriculture or European Arboriculture Council is for, because we organize every year annual general meeting where deputies from all certification centers and all countries can join. We organize a kind of conference every year together with this occasion, and there are many working groups within the EAC which cover various activities, various specialties, and there is lots of opportunities for arborists to get in touch with these certification centers or deputies, country deputies, and help us build this community, because outputs are, as you said, very valuable for everyone, and we definitely need to, let's say, have these networks and these channels to communicate.
And it just makes you happier. Definitely, and that's important, actually.
Yeah,
No, absolutely. So, in preparation for this podcast, I looked at a couple of your standards which are out for consultation at the moment, and one of them is on tree assessment. Could you take us through the key elements of that? I can focus some questions if you wish, or you can perhaps provide an overview to start with.
Maybe I would start with the let's say scale, or with the product of European Arboricultural Standards themselves, because that was pretty interesting story. We started 6 years ago, and the first idea was that we were part of this small discussion group, and we all spoke about some let's say problematic of tree pruning, and we used terms which later on, because imagine within EAC there is 24 countries, and each has their language, and we try to communicate in English, which is really confusing for many of us. And we learned that even if we all think we speak about one thing, we didn't. So we stopped this discussion and tried to, let's say, create a working group which would for everyone define how looks like or what we consider to be proper pruning technique technology, how we describe even the nomenclature for that, so the terminology of that. And the first meeting was supported by EAC, and on this meeting we really came across at least 5 points which we thought everyone does correctly, but everyone did it differently. So
Wow. And
that was
everybody being very passionate about the way that they describe things, the way they've always done things, their own, quite rightly, cultural background. I imagine there was high emotion.
Yeah, definitely it was, yeah. And that was the first kick-off, let's say, for the project of European Arboricultural Standards, because we decided that we had to unify the terminology, the approach to those techniques used on trees. And we asked for a grant, for Erasmus Plus grant. And the first one, the project was called TEST. That's abbreviation. It's not that important, but the result of this project were 3 practical standards for arborists: tree pruning, tree planting, and cabling bracing standard. The discussion was incredibly interesting because, the top people from around Europe just collected for the discussion from 11 countries at that time. And it was really something which, let's say, shifted the let's say, discussion about tree care quite importantly forward. And after this first project, which took 3 years, we asked for follow-up grant for standards in consulting area. So this is what you mentioned before. This is the standard for tree assessment, tree value calculation, and protection of trees on development sites.
Yes.
And this is the phase which is now at the end. And in February next year, we will have the final conference, by the way, which is free. So
tell us about that. How can
come and join
people?
us.
Yeah. So where is it? How can people join?
It will be in Prague.
Yes.
13th and 14th February, so on Valentine's Day. So this is perfect opportunity to spend Valentine's Day in Prague, which is very romantic.
I'm sure that'd be lovely for all the partners we leave at home.
you can come.
Yeah, sure.
And and the conference will be really interesting because it will, let's say, publish the discussion and enable people to really get to the roots of the know-how in the area of consulting arboriculture.
Excellent. So what we'll do nearer the time is put out some more adverts free of charge for you for that conference. And who doesn't want to go to Prague in Valentine's time? Absolutely brilliant. So going back to these standards, let's go back to the tree assessment one and the different levels of tree assessment that you set out in the standard.
Mm-hmm. European standards have advantage and disadvantage together, that they need to connect the know-how of different countries with different legislation, different history. But on the other hand, to lead them toward, let's say, some unified approach to tree assessment in this point. So we developed, let's say, a concept which is maybe a bit more philosophical, because we try to lead the tree assessor in the way to describe the quality of the tree without, let's say, forgetting one important part of that problematics. But on the other hand, we didn't want to, let's say, take only one methodology, because you are aware of the fact that even within Europe, many approaches to tree assessment are being used. So we tried to really create some, let's say, generic platform for all consulting arborists without pushing them into just one approach or one methodology, which was quite a challenge. Another challenge was that we tried, let's say, to bridge some terminological problems which at this moment we have within the industry. For example, if we describe tree, we tend to speak about defects. But this is completely wrong because trees are not bad. So, and if I say, for example, imagine if I tell to the tree owner, your tree has this long list of defects, his reaction will be, okay, so fell it because I don't want defective tree. Yeah, and you know very well that many of these so-called defects are from the other point of view microhabitats. So this is the value of trees, not the problem of the trees. But on the same moment, obviously, these problems can, let's say, end with tree failure or with some problem of that kind. So we really tried to completely evade from the standard the word defect. We try to use different, terms like symptom or other terms, and this is from one point of view maybe just a marginal problem. On the other hand, we need to communicate our knowledge well and communicate it to be understood from the other side and be correct, of course, because we can't use negatively or negative terms for features which are in fact positive or which just create the tree, for example the oak tree. So these challenges really were pretty big, and but on the other hand, we are at this moment pretty happy with the result because the text of the standard went through public opponency. So we send it to all arborists around Europe really to get their views on the text. And and in February you will have the chance to read the text and maybe one more thought, because this complexity and this maybe level where we can understand and support each other has some limits. So we enable each country, each region, if necessary, to create a so-called national annex for each standard, where each country has the right to describe their differences, like, maybe, or the higher level of detail where the tree assessment is being provided in that country. Yeah, so each country can use, or we all understand, we all supported the, let's say, basic text of the standard, and each country has the possibility to extend the text of the standard for the region in question by the national annex. So this is the logic of our work.
I really like that. So I read the standard, and it celebrates trees, but it goes through it in a very logical way of considering the basic and advanced assessment. It sets out what the advanced assessments might mean using particular equipment or aerial inspection, and it describes all of the multiple benefits of trees, but it isn't overly prescriptive. It doesn't, for example, say you have to do a tree survey using this standard table, which is welcome, because we don't want to stifle creativity and innovation and uniqueness. So I think it has that balance beautifully. So people can go online and look at that, can't they?
Definitely. Thank you for the summary. All the standards are as the results of European grants, so they are freely available, and you can go on the webpage European Arboricultural Standards.eu, and there all the texts are available for you.
There is another standard which I enjoyed reading, which was the tree value calculation standard for amenity trees, for non-productive trees. Tell us about, that really does drill down into, again, how we value trees in terms of, one of them I thought was really interesting, which was a property value of the tree, i.e. the land in which the tree occupies, as well as the productive value of the tree. But we, of course, know that trees are so much more than that. Perhaps you could outline, first of all, the fundamentals about the tree value calculation standard and why it was produced. and then a bit more of the detail.
This is the area which at this moment is in strong, I would say, movement within the perception of public and even within the industry, because I would say all or vast majority of the methods which were developed in past were, let's say, oriented on the replacement value of trees and plus minus full stop. And many countries have these methods somehow incorporated in the law system. So again, we tried not to, let's say, push into some of these methods, but on the other hand, to take the positive experience and the knowledge which is incorporated in them to create, again, kind of philosophical basis how the value of trees should be considered in this century, and within the knowledge of the industry which we have at this moment. For example, one of the parts of the tree values which we still try to capture properly are the so-called tree eco-benefits, and this is something the public knows very well. We are at the end of summer, and very, very personally that walking on some roads where are no trees and being under the shadow of trees by really hot summer day, it's a vast difference. So in our cities, mostly in the cities in southern part of Europe, without trees we are not going to survive really in the cities, and these eco-benefits needs to be transferred into some financial representation to enable us to really present the trees in their proper, let's say, extent of the importance which they have for human life. So within this standard, we divided the problematics into areas, as you say, the property value, replacement value, tree eco-benefits, wildlife value, or value of trees as parts of ecosystem, and try to propose the approaches, the methods, the, let's say, points which should not be forgotten by this kind of calculations. But frankly, this is area where all the countries still a bit struggle and look for the proper methodological apparatus for future.
So what would you say to a decision maker like a municipality head of service who says to you, why value trees? Why?
Because they are irreplaceable. Just imagine that if we just consider the tree being represented only by, let's say, some replacement value, but the replacement itself is going to happen within 60 years. So even if I get the money, let's say, for the tree, I will not live long enough to enjoy the same quality of the tree. And this is when we speak only about, let's say, these mainstream trees, so maximum age, let's say these 68 years. But imagine that we deal with trees which are several hundreds years old. So they are completely irreplaceable, and their value is just, like value of human life. What does it mean? How much money shall I pay to kill someone? This is completely ridiculous thought. But with trees, we do these decisions pretty commonly, because the infrastructure changes within cities, new roads, new parking lots, lots of stuff is going on in the inhabited part of the landscape, and we really need to consider properly all the values and all the dynamics which trees represent in these connections in these decisions. So my advice would be first really analyze the canopy cover, the trees in questions. What are they about? Because the first questions should not be about the value, about the money, because that's only the last resort how to express the value of the trees. The first must be really what's the age structure, what's the species structure, how the trees were maintained in past, how what kind of state from the physiological point of view or biomechanical point of view they are in. So there is lots of, let's say, connections from the tree assessment to the tree value calculation. And the, let's say, most advanced thought is really to try to really take in account all the services and maybe even disservices in certain
Yes.
connections which trees, let's say, offer or produce.
Yes, it's very fair. The document is very fair about disservices, and I think we also need to be open about that. By that, we mean trip hazards, leaves blocking gutters, skidding on fallen rotten fruit, etc., and also damage to buildings. So I love the fairness of that. I also think it's a very open standard in that you don't name any of the commonly known methods, such as iTree Eco, or in the UK we also have CAVAT, which is a financial evaluation of trees, so on and so forth. But canopy cover is something that's fairly intuitively understood by those outside industry. And funny enough, in between having 100 WhatsApps of gorgeous photographs of my baby grandson, I'm actually producing a canopy cover assessment of the redevelopment of a housing estate in London, which I'm enjoying. And I was also heartened to see this in the draft British standard that's out at the moment for consultation, which was a previous episode on Tree Lady Talk. So I think that canopy cover is useful because it's dead easy to visualise and see. But that is a really in-depth and very thoughtful standard. So again, I urge listeners to go and have a look at that, and we can all take something from it. I also like the fact that you reference friend of the show Cecil Konynendijk's 330-300 rule as well, which has gained such traction, hasn't it?
Definitely. We published just recently an interview with Cecil, and I must say that this, let's say, philosophy he brought in urban forestry is now really influencing on political level the decision makers in many cities around Europe. So yeah, there is lots of really interesting activities going on, and I hope that our standards just are slightly contributing to this movement.
Absolutely. Tell listeners where they can find that interview and other interviews that the European Arboricultural Council carried out.
If you don't mind a bit of Czech, you can go on YouTube and search for Arboricultural Academy channel on YouTube, or directly search for interview with Cecil Konynendijk, and you will definitely find not only him but quite a number of interesting arborists around Europe.
Oh, so that's your podcast. So I'm going to check that out. My Czech is non-existent. I'm terribly sorry.
We try to develop or to put subtitles for many videos, but there is still, the basic idea of the channel was to communicate the arboricultural knowledge with Czech arborists. So many of the videos are in our language, but you will definitely find there something which interests you and is accessible for you.
Oh, that's excellent. So are you the host of that?
Yeah.
And do you love what do you get from interviewing people? Tell me about the process that you go through and what inspires you to carry on with that.
We started with that 3-4 years ago, and I must say it was kind of sidekick because we at that time tried to develop our ability to really film our know-how and produce some material, because we learned that many people, maybe younger people, are not reading anymore. That the information uptake is more from the visual part, so from videos from YouTube. And I think our industry must adapt to that. So obviously, I'm not telling that we should not publish books, but on the other hand, we should develop our ability into transform our know-how into this video form. And I must say that it was, and it still is, quite steep learning curve, because it's completely different way of looking at the problematics and completely way how to process it. And by this, or within this process, which started in COVID era, really. So we met lots of people and very interesting people. So I started just to interview them for a while. So from short interviews, it grew up a bit. So at this moment, we do these 10, 15 minutes interviews with really interesting people, just to be able to, let's say, spread their activities, their philosophy, their part of the arboricultural industry which they represent. And I must tell you, it's so big variety of really fascinating people
Yeah,
and passionate people in the industry that I really enjoyed the time, and this is one of my passions at this moment.
my passion too. I mean, we're over 120 episodes now, heard all around the world, and we've got a very new YouTube channel which is a bit slow off the ground, but the privilege of speaking to people anywhere in the world and the dissemination of information, because you're right about people not necessarily reading a book. I mean, I love an actual book. So tell us about the arboricultural scene in the Czech Republic. Now, because before you answer that, I'm particularly interested in legislation. So if you have a tree in your garden, are you allowed to fell it? Are there any regulations? Let's start with that.
Czech Republic has the advantage and disadvantage that we grew or not a long time ago, we are a socialistic country, and lots of these, rights the state just took without asking, and people just got used to, many these limitations of the ownership, which in certain areas is big advantage for the trees or for arboriculture at this moment. So in Czech Republic there is quite a strict legislation about trees. There is a generic Tree Protection Act. So with all trees in countries, in private ownership, in cities, all trees are protected by the state. And from certain size, for a certain stem circumference, the tree owner must ask the deputy of the state for the permission to fell tree, even if it's on his or her own property. So the Nature Protection Act is pretty strong, which is very good in general. On the other hand, as the legislation goes, sometimes too strict legislation makes problems to the professionals. So, for example, when we mentioned the veteran tree care, that part of the approach where we want slowly, let's say, release these veteran trees from shade, for example, from canopy, we use techniques called veteranization, which is damaging of younger trees with intent to create either microhabitats which are missing at that spot, or slowly removing them from the area where they damage the target veteran trees. And with this strict legislation, this is very hard or almost impossible to be used in Czech Republic at this moment. So the industry just must grow, and the legislation must be developed accordingly, of course. But sometimes it's quite a fight. So back to your question, if you want to fell a tree in Czech Republic, you must, in general, get permission from the state or from the community.
Gosh, that's the highest level of legislation I have come across in the world so far. Mm-hmm. So there must be many, many arboricultural officers.
Yes. Every community, it obviously depends on the size. So with the really small communities, the role of deputy of the state plays the mayor, really. So obviously, sometimes it's questioned how he or she is able to distinguish there. But on the other hand, even the act that the tree owner must ask prior to fell the tree is enough, I would say, because if you have just free will and if you got chainsaw and bad temper, you can go and fell your trees. This is not not serving well quite many times. So even the process is fine, I think, and I must say it works pretty well.
So, what happens if somebody does it without asking? Somebody fells a line of trees in their front garden, or a developer has a piece of land and fells those trees. What are the consequences?
You mean without permission?
Without permission.
That could be pretty harsh because there are quite high fines. And you know, this is the law is from 1992, so it's pretty old law, and many people already know it, and there are many enthusiasts who create groups which protect nature, etc. So in many cases, I would say this will be noted. It will be somehow solved by the administration, and the one who did this unlawful felling not only will get the fine for the act, but quite often he's forced to replace the replacement value of these trees, which can be +10. It can be really big problem. So I would say at this moment, 90% of people, even developers, will definitely not go for this kind of activity.
And so it sounds like it's quite the arboricultural officer or the mayoral office is very well resourced. Because one of the issues we have in the UK is that we do have strong legislation, certainly not for all trees, but local government offices or municipalities have struggled with finance for some time, and sometimes people just get away with it because there isn't anybody to check or the political will to see things through, often down to resourcing. But it sounds like in the Czech Republic you've got it pretty well covered.
You know, I don't want to sound over optimistic. Obviously, there is lots of cases when no one is discovered or something like that. But speaking about, let's say, generic perception of the public or of people, I would really say that the tree felling is something which people know they should have or they should some permission for, and the professionals definitely do. So. Only few, I would say, developers would go for some, let's say, black acts in that area.
Fascinating. And what about tree planting? Do you need permission to plant a tree?
No, the tree planting is in hands of the landowner, definitely. But there, I would say Czech Republic has now quite an issue because I think 6 years ago the government started with really massive support of tree plantings, really massive. And sometimes, in certain areas, the over-enthusiastic mayors promise to double their number of trees in their cities, etc. So it got really political, and you know that we just can't do work with trees in these huge steps, or we can divide the tree population into really huge different stages. So first problem was that there is quite an issue with quality of works, because not only professionals but anyone just can get support to plant trees, and the quality of tree planting is sometimes really sad. The second thing is that we have lots of problems with getting adequate tree stock quality. So there is not so many quality trees on the market. And the third and most important issue is that with no evidence of these newly planted trees, we really have problems to provide adequate level of aftercare. And you know very well that this is a sin of the industry. Just plant trees and not care for them in the first, let's say, 5-10 years. So in the tree planting area, I would say Czech Republic developed quite really problematic concept, which at this moment fights back, because we have, even if we try now to support the owners of these young trees, In certain areas, the research showed that only 30 to 50% of trees survived only. Can try to imagine 30% of let's say successful plantings. That's really sad. So I would just maybe use this as a warning. Please, considering these support events, yeah, because it's not just state, it's private sponsors. Everyone likes to plant trees, obviously, but to plant trees is not enough. We must
Oh, yes.
establish trees. We must provide them with the aftercare within first years. Otherwise, these activities can go just totally into vain.
Yes, it should be a tree establishment program, not a tree planting program. And I speak to people around the world, and this is a universal problem, which speaks to the problem of understanding what actually takes a tree to grow. So we've all got work to do in that, and it is frustrating, but so no, that's really, really interesting. So I'm getting a sense that there would be many arborists in the Czech Republic as a percentage perhaps compared to other nations. Is there a problem with recruitment? Do young people know it's a job?
We've got two universities who offer the bachelor level in arboriculture, and we've got, I would say, many gardening high schools who just cover some in certain level arboriculture. But I must say that quite a number of arborists at this moment came from other specializations. So yeah, you know, arboriculture in Czech Republic grew very quickly, and my perception is that it still is in the booming part of the curve because many communities look for arborists. There is definitely not a problem to get jobs in arboriculture at this moment. So yeah, I'm pretty optimistic, and at the same moment, even the knowledge and the experience of new arborists is increasing because they all start with the knowledge of basic technologies. They start with some kind of certification quite commonly. So in comparison with the years when I started, these 30 years ago, it's definitely, you know, huge difference, positive difference. And, you know, the possibility to work abroad is for countries like Czech Republic pretty interesting because, you know, economically it's much better for us to work in Germany, in Austria, in other countries. And many arborists do because they are highly qualified. They are bringing back the experience from abroad, which is really excellent. So we strongly support that. By the way, using European Arboricultural Council tools.
Wow, that's such good news. That was really, really uplifting to hear about how great it is in the Czech Republic. I mean, my final question really on that is, are there many women working in arboriculture?
You know, I must say from the very start, we really tried to incorporate girls and women into arboriculture, and I think we succeeded. For example, in my company, 50% of my employees are women, so I'm really proud on that, and you know, it works very well within our consultancy works. Even tree climbers are women. It's not exception. So quite obviously, you know, it's physically demanding, so it's maybe not for every woman. On the other hand, it's not really exceptional to have in bigger companies percentage of women, and you know, in the consulting arboriculture, this is, you know, totally fine for you know, anyone really to work on that level. So yeah, we really try to support women in our arboriculture, and you know, seeing the audience in our conferences, we succeeded because, you know, as I told you, 20, 30, 50% sometimes of the audience are women, so we are happy.
Well, congratulations on that. That's absolutely brilliant. So, Jaroslav, what is your ambition for the standards in arboriculture?
You know, the ambition is to spread it as far as we can. The practical standards at this moment are being translated into 17 languages, which really was a big surprise for us because within the project we promised 3 languages. So the 17 languages is a real surprise. And for these standards being free, being just available for everyone, I think that concept we are really proud on, because if we have the arboricultural knowledge only, let's say, within books, which you need to pay for, which is within national standards, which again are pretty expensive, this is not the way how to, let's say, spread it really, for everyone who must know about trees. For example, you mentioned the developers, which is, a huge number of people who are moving around trees, deciding about future of trees. And if we don't provide them with the adequate knowledge, we just can't expect it really. So the basic concept of the standards being free, being available, being translated into as many languages as possible to really make them local, and being equipped with the national annexes, which again really spreads the impact of those standards. I really hope that this is one of the acmes of the activities of EAC and activities of our group, and I really hope that they will make the difference within European arboriculture. Maybe not that much for countries which already developed their standards in past, because they already have them. But I must guarantee you that the majority of countries in Europe don't have arboricultural standards yet. And this is a perfect impulse for arborists in these countries, and they definitely can start their, let's say, definitions of their own approaches to the tree care on a much higher level than we did before.
Thank you, Jaroslav Kolarik. I just want to thank you for your passion and dedication for the arboricultural community within Europe, and for your clear description of how things are in the Czech Republic. And I feel so hopeful, and this is such a positive thing. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for inviting me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.